Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with SureCall. Today's host is Dustin McElprang. He is our National Key Account Manager, and he will be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and Dustin will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Dustin, thank you so much for being with us today. I greatly appreciate it. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on over.
Thank you very much, Julie, and thank you everybody for giving me a few minutes of your time today. Unlike the coronavirus quarantine, I'll do my best to keep this short and to the point. I wanted to start off by reviewing our agenda. I know many of you guys have attended these trainings before. Many of you are probably aware of who SureCall is, but I thought I'd give you a brief recap on who SureCall is, what we do as a company, especially in case there's anybody new on the presentation today. I'll then go in and talk a little bit about how SureCall signal boosters work, and then we're going to touch base on one of our key products. It's our Fusion for Home product series. This is going to be the meat of our presentation. I want to look at some of the specs and features around the Fusion for Home booster. As well, I want to touch base on the DIY installation. One of the biggest questions we get with our product is installation available? And we're going to get into that a little bit further in the presentation, but in short, it is, but our products are designed to be DIY, so we're going to touch base on that. And then, of course, at the end, we will take any questions that you might have. So SureCall was founded in 2001. We are a cell phone signal booster manufacturer, or in other words, we make devices that you can use in a home, building, or car. It takes your cell phone signal from outside, amplifies it, and rebroadcasts it inside, ensuring that any dropped calls go away. We are headquartered in Fremont, California. And when we started, the focus of our business was commercial and enterprise sales. We were focused on large building products. In the last 10 years or so, we've taken that great technology that works so well in our commercial and enterprise products, and we've condensed them into residential boosters. SureCall currently holds 7 U.S. patents, and we have many more that are pending. A little bit about SureCall and our products, some of the features of our products. For one, all of our products have what we call SureIQ. This is a technology that ensures that the booster will never turn off due to overpower. And what I mean by that is if there's ever a booster that's operating too close to a cell phone tower, oftentimes the cell phone tower will overpower the booster and it'll shut off. With our SureIQ technology, you can rest assured that that would never happen. The SureIQ also covers what we call auto adjusting gain or auto gain control. This is much like 2 microphones that you hold too close to each other. You hear this high-pitched whistle. With our booster systems, there's an outside antenna and an inside antenna. And if those antennas are too close, that same kind of feedback occurs. You don't hear it, but the booster does hear it. With our auto gain control, what will happen is the booster will just power back in steps to eliminate any kind of oscillation and ensure that the booster is working properly. All of our products are SEC and IC approved, and SureCall actually holds the patent on our 5-band cellular boosters. What this is and what this means is our boosters will work for all carriers, all users, all frequencies simultaneously. SureCall was also the first, and we're proud of this, the first to announce 5G signal boosters. We already have one out for industrial use, and we are working on 5G boosters for commercial and residential use. And then last thing to note here, our boosters are assembled here in the United States. So this brings me to the question of why a cell phone signal booster is needed. Well, for one, to prevent dropped calls, to increase data speeds, especially for those people in rural or suburban areas that rely on their cell phone alone for internet or who may not have access to high-speed internet. Our signal boosters extend fringe areas, whether it's somebody who lives right beyond the fringe and doesn't have signal in their home, or somebody who might be traveling on vacation and who will be out in the hills away from the cellular network. As well, a cell phone signal booster is needed to provide reliable means of communication for people who rely wholly on cell phones to communicate. I don't have the number in front of me, but in today's world, the number is growing larger and larger of people who do not have landlines and who only use their cell phone for communication. And the last reason is to combat weak cell phone service. So what causes weak cellular service? There's three main things that's going to hinder cell phone service, and these are distance from a cell phone tower, terrain, and building materials. So distance from a cell phone tower, that makes sense. We all understand that. The further away you are from the cell tower, the less signal you're going to receive. Now, terrain covers a lot, whether it's summer foliage on the trees, which is going to block the signal, or whether you have a customer or an end user who might live in the hills, surrounded by trees, or in the valleys. And actually, this picture here, I'm proud to say, is a picture of Bryce Canyon National Park, located here in Utah. It's my backyard, basically. I grew up not far from here. And then the third one is building materials. Very rarely does somebody suffer from weak cell phone service by only one of these. Usually it's a combination of two or all three. And speaking of building material, it tends to be one of the bigger problems. Here's a quick example and chart showing some of the common building materials used in homes or offices and how much signal loss occurs when the signal tries to pass through these materials. Starts off with common drywall. With drywall, signal is going to be impeded by about 2 decibels. So cell phone service is measured in what's called decibels. Every 3 dB up or down is going to either double or cut in half the cell phone service. So you see a solid pine door here, that's going to impede the signal by 3 dB. That's cutting the signal in half. And then surprisingly, low E glass has the biggest impedance on cell phone service. We're looking at negative 30 to negative 34 dB loss. What that means is when you might have 5 bars of perfect signal inside, on the inside of a low E glass, you might only have 1 bar of signal. So there's a lot of things in buildings that impede the signal. And there's one thing that a lot of people don't consider, and that is cell tower overload. This is actually the 4th main reason why people suffer from weak cell phone service. And this has actually grown to be a big problem during the coronavirus and during these quarantine periods. You have cell towers in urban areas that are made and that are prepared for cell tower overload, right? We're talking about metropolitan areas that have thousands of people a day using their cell towers. They're made a little bit more robust. But cell towers in more of your rural or suburban areas aren't used to having so many users at once. And we've had a lot of calls come in, and I know that speaking with Dave, that you guys too have had a lot of calls come in with people saying, hey, my cell phone signal worked great, and then over the last month, 2 months, it doesn't work very well. What can we do? Well, this is the problem, cell tower overload, and it can take happy people and turn them a little shocked, a little upset that their cell phone service no longer works. So now that we have a firm understanding of what causes weak cell phone service, I want to talk about what boosters do and how they work. So whether you get a call in from an end user or a customer saying, hey, I don't have any cell phone service because of my house, the structure, we built a new house, it's a energy efficient house, or whether they live out in the hills and the rural areas of the US, we do have a solution. So what's happening is you have the tower or the signal coming from the cell phone tower, and it hits the house, it hits these buildings, and some signal will make it through enough to maybe hold a call. Oftentimes it's not even enough to hold the call. What our systems provide is what I like to call a carpool lane, or in other words, a direct path for that cell signal to come in to the home. So as you see on this diagram, on the top of this roof is an antenna. The antenna communicates with the cell phone tower, grabs that signal, brings it into the building where it's then boosted and then rebroadcasted to any cell phone devices that might be inside the building. So you might be asking yourself, which product is right for your customers? Well, I wanted to take a look at, again, our Fusion for Home product line. And real quick, I want to go over some of the features and specs on our Fusion for Home product that make it so great. Depending on which Fusion for Home kit you use, You can expect up to about 5,000 square feet of coverage inside the home. All of our Fusion for Home products have a 72 dB gain. So again, going back to that building diagram that showed the materials that block the signal, our booster is going to increase whatever signal is outside by 72 dB gain. The Fusion for Home product strives extremely well in rural and suburban areas. Yes, it's going to work well in urban areas as well, but for the rural and suburban areas, due to some of the technology in it, it works extremely well. Part of that technology that makes it work so well, again, is our SureIQ technology. I made mention of that at the beginning. This is what the booster is going to use to ensure that any kind of feedback, oscillation, or power overload from the tower does not cause the booster to shut off. And all of our Fusion for Home products are what we call future-proof. What this means is they will continue to work even when 5G rolls out. Now, I want to make a note of this. It does not mean that they will boost 5G service, but once 5G rolls out, the 4G service will still be used, and probably for years or even decades to come. We offer a lifetime tech support on all of our products. As well, our Fusion for Home product line contains what we call our 2XP technology. I want to explain what this does. Usually, the cell phone tower has no problem getting the signal to you. I mean, we're talking about towers that have tons of output power. However, your phone puts out usually less than half of a watt of output power, and it doesn't have the power to send the signal back to the tower. So oftentimes you might get somebody that says, hey, I've got a bar of signal, but I can't make a call. I can't hold a call. Well, more than likely the culprit is the power going back to the cell phone tower. With our boosters, we offer 2 times the technology over similar boosters. And what this does is it takes that signal from your phone and makes sure that it sends it back to the cell phone tower quickly. This is going to increase your data speeds for anybody who might be using the internet. And then lastly, we offer the industry-leading 3-year product warranty on all of our products. So now we've taken a quick look at some of the features of the Fusion for Home, I wanted to look at the main kit options that we have. The first one is our Omni Whip Kit. Again, I understand that this may not be new to some of you, but hopefully anybody who's new can glean a little bit of information from this. The Omni Whip Kit is our easiest kit to install. It also provides the least amount of coverage, and I'll explain why in a moment. The next kit is our Yagi Whip Kit, and then coming in at the most powerful kit is our Yagi Panel. And exclusive for Microcom, we've actually bundled this kit with a J-pole mount, and here in a few slides, we'll see what that would be used for. Now, when you look at kit options and trying to figure out why one is better than the other, you've got to ask yourself or ask the end user on what they're looking for. And there's going to come down to 2 things, either cost or the size of their building. So the Omni Whip Kit retails for $299, and it can cover up to 2,000 square feet. You have the Yagi Whip Kit, and sorry, let me point out, when I'm saying Omni Whip, the Omni is referencing the outside antenna, which is an omnidirectional antenna. The Whip is referencing the inside antenna, which is that black whip antenna you see attached to the booster. So in our Yagi Whip Kit, it has a Yagi directional outside antenna, and it has a Whip inside antenna, and it can cover about 3,000 square feet. And then we have our Yagi Panel Kit, which has a Yagi outside antenna and a panel inside antenna, and it can cover up to 5,000 square feet. And then again, the kit that is exclusive to Microcom, which is our Yagi Panel Kit bundled with the J-pole mount. So you might ask yourself, looking at this, well, why can one kit cover more area than another? And it has to do with those antennas. Again, all of these boosters are the same. They all have 72 dB gain, but the antennas are different. Some antennas have more gain and add more signal than others, as well as some are easier to install than others. So now we have an idea of the basic kit offerings, their coverage area, and their cost. Let's look at what areas the Fusion for Home works well in. What type of buildings? Whether it's a home or a cabin, whether it's a retail store, or even apartments or condos, the Fusion for Home in urban, rural, or suburban areas is going to work great. Even in extremely large buildings, oftentimes they only need one area covered or one room or one office. And so the Fusion for Home can always be considered for those larger buildings as well. With the Fusion for Home, again, I want to touch base on the DIY installation. One of the most common questions we receive is installation included? And although it is, we do have a network of installers throughout the nation, and we also contract with a nationwide installer called Snap Install. The installation comes at a cost. And so when you're looking at the common household user who's just spent $300 or $500 on a booster, more than likely they don't want to spend another $500 to get it installed. With that in mind, we've designed all of our kits to be DIY. And part of what I want to focus on here is that installation process. If we can get you to understand a little bit more of the installation process, when you have customers or end users calling in, you can then explain it a little bit more to them. And then, as always, our customer support is always available to take any calls, to answer any questions from any customers or any end users. But when it comes to our installation, there's basically two different things, and that is our Omni antenna configuration and our Yagi antenna configuration. Real quick though, let's look at the kit components for any of our cell phone booster kits. There's going to be three main components. The first is going to be an outside antenna. Again, what we've already seen, there's two options. There's going to be a Yagi antenna or an omnidirectional antenna. The second main component is the booster itself, and the third main component is the inside antenna. And the two options there are going to be a panel antenna or whip style antenna. And then of course you've got coax cable to connect all three of the components together. So when looking at installing the booster, the first step is to mount the outside antenna. If the customer has an omnidirectional antenna, they've got two mounting options. They can either mount the antenna on the side of a wall using the included L bracket and wall mount hardware, or they can install it on a pole using the included L mount and pole mount hardware. Wherever they decide to install it, once they have the L bracket installed either on the wall or on the pole, the next step is to attach the antenna to it, hook the coax cable to the bottom of the antenna, and then with our omnidirectional antenna, as long as it's vertical, it's working. It's going to send and receive signal in all directions. That's what makes it so easy to install. It's because you just point that antenna up and it's going to work. However, that's also what makes it to where it doesn't cover quite as much area. If a customer buys one of the kits that has the Yagi outside antenna, we highly recommend that they mount it on a pole, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Once they have it on a pole, again, all of the hardware is included. They will need to point the Yagi antenna in the direction of the cell tower. So unlike the omnidirectional, which receives and sends signal in all directions, the Yagi antenna only receives and sends signal in the direction that it is pointed. So if a customer if a customer isn't sure on what direction their cell tower is, they can always call their local carrier, who will more than likely know. If it's a customer who's in a rural area, more than likely they already know. If they're on the east side of town, they know that the tower is probably towards town, and they can point it in that direction. Another option, and this is why we recommend that the Yagi antenna be mounted on a pole, is to have somebody inside once the system and the kit is installed, have somebody inside by the inside antenna watching their cell phone, while a person up on the roof turns that Yagi antenna 15 degrees every 30 seconds until the person on the inside sees a peak in service. Now, if the customer doesn't have a pole or isn't comfortable mounting it to a vent pipe, as in this picture, that's when that J-pole mount comes in. It's in that exclusive Microcom bundle. They can attach that to a wall or to a separate pole. Even we've had people mount it to a tree and then mount the antenna on that J-pole mount. Once the outside antenna is installed, whether it's an omnidirectional kit or a Yagi kit, the next step is to run the cable into the house. There are a couple of options here. You have drilling a hole or using maybe a pre-existing access port. A lot of people aren't comfortable doing that. Makes total sense. So we provided a few easy tips to get that cable inside the home. The first one is going to be to use the attic ventilation system. Most homes and roofs have one of these. It may not look just like this. Most of them have a wire around the bottom to prevent any kind of rodents from coming in or out, birds, for example. But it's usually a great place to run the cable from outside on the roof where the antenna is mounted to the attic where they can get it inside the home. The other option is to use a flashing for one of the vent pipes. As you see in the bottom of this, that metal flashing can oftentimes lift up and it provides a great access port inside the house. The last option is to run it through a window. Although this is not something we currently provide in our kits, they do have flat window cable that you can run through a window and allows the window to close and seal properly. Another option is to take the cable that comes in the kit and just run it through the cable. So now the outside antenna is installed. The cable has been run into the house. The next step is to mount the inside antenna. If the customer purchases the Omni Whip Kit or the Yagi Whip Kit, this step is very simple because that inside antenna attaches directly to the booster as you see here. However, if they purchase the Yagi panel kit, they would use the included hardware to mount the panel antenna on a wall. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be mounted as long as it's in the home somewhere. Once that's finished, all it's left to do is to power up the booster, to hook the coax cables to the booster and plug it in and to enjoy great cell phone service. We've made sure to make our kits DIY for this purpose. Again, a lot of folks need a booster, but they don't want to pay for the installation. And so with our kits, you can rest assured that the customer will have everything they need inside the kit to get the job done. And again, we have our full-time customer support who is always willing to take any calls, to walk anybody through the installation service. And the whole goal in this is to turn angry customers into happy customers and ensure that they can use their cell phone to call grandma, or the grandma can stay in contact with their grandkids, or that the person who works from home can do so easily, especially during these times, can make sure that they are getting their work done with a reliable cell phone connection. The next screen, there is our customer support line, as well as my email and my cell phone. Again, we are always available to take any calls, any questions from you, or from any of your customers or end users who might be struggling with the installation process of our boosters, or who may not know which booster is best for them. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you guys so much for your time. Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any questions.
Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate that wonderful presentation. It's great. And I do have some questions for you. Let's get started with the first one. First question here is about distance. What would be the maximum distance from the cell tower to a device, and would it work 100% of the time, or can you talk to that?
Good question. There's not really a set distance. And the reason being, if we think back to the three main reasons for weak cell phone service, there's distance, there's terrain, and then building material. Some people might only be a mile away from the tower, but because there's so much foliage and trees, or maybe a mountain in between them, they've got terrible service. Whereas other people might be 15 miles away from the cell tower, but it's line of sight, and so a booster can still work. So with that being said, it's kind of hard to say a max distance. The question is there any pre-existing signal? Something to point out, our boosters do not make signal. They simply take what signal is there, amplify it, and rebroadcast it inside the home. So as long as there is some existing signal outside, then our boosters will work.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Dustin. Next question here for you. Regarding 5G, will your device work more than a kilometer or less than that? Or again, does it depend on materials or foliage that might be in the way?
So again, with 5G, our boosters right now will not boost the 5G frequency. They will work on the 4G frequency, which will be around for again, decades to come. That being said, 5G has a number of hurdles surrounding it, and this is actually a great topic for a future presentation. Because of the size and wavelength of the 5G signal, it does not travel far, and it does not propagate or penetrate walls very well. And so there is going to be a lot of hurdles around 5G. And the great news is anybody who is going to want 5G inside their home will need a booster to get it in there because of those hurdles that surround 5G. More to come on that in the future when we have our 5G boosters certified and available.
Excellent. Thank you, Dustin, for that. Next question is regarding antennas, and you just talked about it. So you have both 360-degree antenna. Are all of them omnidirectional? Can you clarify?
So with our Fusion for Home kit or series, the two options for an outside antenna are going to be that omnidirectional, look like a white pole. Yes, that's going to send and receive in 360 degrees. And the other option is our Yagi antenna. That one will not. It's very directional. That's the antenna that will need to be pointed in the direction of the cell phone tower. That being said, even looking at all of our other kits, our vehicle kits and other in-building kits, they all fall under those same two categories, either omnidirectional. For example, all of our in-vehicle kits, and I know we didn't talk about vehicle boosters on this training, but all of our in-vehicle kits come included with an omnidirectional antenna, which makes sense. You're driving down the road, you need it to send and receive in all directions, whereas the rest of our in-building kits come with either the same omnidirectional antenna or the same Yagi antenna.
Excellent. Thank you, Dustin. The next question here, I believe you answered. I'm going to throw it out there anyway. We can talk about it a little bit more. The question is, do I aim the outdoor antenna towards anywhere specific? And you did talk about aiming it toward, of course, cell towers. So is that always something that is that a general rule of thumb?
That's correct. So that Yagi antenna works great for anyone in rural areas. Again, at the beginning, I pointed out that every 3 dB increase or every 3 decibels more of signal is going to effectively double the coverage area inside the home. So our Yagi antenna has approximately 10 dB of gain, 10 decibels of gain, whereas our omnidirectional antenna only has about 5 decibels of gain. So in an area where a customer maybe has tried the omnidirectional or they're not sure which one, if they're in an area where the signal is extremely weak, that Yagi antenna will make a huge difference. And with that being said, it's going to work best pointed at the cell phone tower. If, let's say, the cell phone tower is north, and let's say the Yagi antenna is pointed south, it's not going to pick up any of the cell phone service. But even if it's pointed east or northeast, it's not going to receive as much signal coming from the cell tower. So it is best to point it in the direction of the cell phone tower. Again, anybody who might wonder what direction their cell phone tower is, they can call their local carrier, who more than likely will know what direction it is by looking at their address. And if not, that's where that little trick comes in on turning the outside Yagi antenna 10 to 15 degrees every 30 seconds. The reason we say every 30 seconds is the phone inside takes about 30 seconds to register the new signal. And so you would continue that process until the person inside says, hey, wow, go back. The signal just peaked, and when you turned it, it went back down. You know that where the signal peaked is probably the direction that the cell phone tower is in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm going to keep that in mind too after I buy your product. Okay, I know. Thank you, Dustin. And I think you may have touched on this. Does the antennas and the boosting work with all carriers?
Correct. Yep. All of our boosters are going to boost the signal for any phone, any carrier, and multiple users simultaneously. Whereas you look at some of the carriers, they have what's called FIM-to-cells, or they have devices that they can sell you that will work only for their network, and anybody who wants to use it must be registered to that device. And they work well in certain areas. Our boosters are going to work for anybody at the same time. If you have Verizon and you have it installed in your house, and a cousin comes over who has Sprint or AT&T, it's going to work for them as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Dustin. Can you talk again about the warranties for these products?
Definitely. So SureCall offers the industry-leading 3-year warranty, as well as lifetime technical support. So if a customer or an end user ever calls in and says, hey, I have somebody who had a booster, they had it for 2 years, 2.5 years, and then it quit working. Give us a call. We like to pride ourselves in great customer service, and even oftentimes if it's beyond the 3 years, as long as it's not too far beyond, we'll still help them out. We'll still warranty out the product. We don't want anybody to be stuck with an expensive paperweight. So if something happens, maybe lightning strikes, or there's some power surge, or there's some failure, even though it's rare, it does happen, some failure in the booster, we want to make sure that your customers are taken care of, that they have what they need to continue to use their cell phones inside their homes.
Thank you, Dustin. Can you talk about manufacturing? I believe you mentioned that your product is manufactured here in the United States. Can you clarify?
Yeah, so what that is our product's final assembly is here in the United States. Like many companies, we receive a lot of our components from various locations. Many of those are across seas. So because of that, we can't claim that they are manufactured in the United States. However, all the components are shipped here, and then the final assembly is done in our Fremont headquarters.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Dustin. And thank you so much for answering all of our questions today. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar with us. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of the products mentioned or shown here today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And please remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so you can view it again. Dustin, thank you again for your time and all of your valuable information today. Everybody, thank you. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Bye-bye now.